Welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast. Just talked a little bit about Jaden Rashada. We're going to end by talking about the power conferences, who I think is the best power conference. We're going to start at the bottom, though. So right now, I'm only ranking the four power conferences. I'm not going to talk about the Pac-12 right now, at least until they get an eighth member for football. Then maybe they rejoin the conversation. But we're going to go with the quote-unquote Power 4 conferences now. And at 4, I have the Big 12 conference. So I think one of the big pluses of the Big 12 is the depth of their conference. Pretty much since 2020, a different school has won the Big 12 every single season. Obviously, before that time frame, there was a long stretch where Oklahoma won every year pretty much during the Baker Mayfield time. Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray, those seasons, Oklahoma really had kind of a stranglehold on the Big 12. But after that, after COVID, kind of seems like the Big 12 is pretty much anyone's game, especially after Oklahoma, Texas left for the SEC, really opened the door, left a power vacuum in the Big 12. Arizona State, BYU, Texas Tech, I think, are the front runners to win the conference this year. You never know, though. And all those teams, I think, are really strong programs, teams that could have really good seasons, potentially. Texas Tech is an interesting one to watch. They went 8-5 last season, but they spent a bunch of money this year in the transfer portal, brought in a couple guys, just brought in another transfer in Stanford, DN, David Bailey, who was really an All-American at one point, all Pac-12 guy. Really strong pickup for Texas Tech. So that's going to be a program to watch. Oklahoma State last year, they were a preseason favorite to win the Big 12 by a lot of pundits. Then they went 0-5 in Big 12 play. But that's a team that I think could bounce back. I think that just kind of shows how chaotic the Big 12 can be from year to year. I don't think there's any teams in the Big 12 that are really going to be dominant. I don't know if anyone's a legitimate championship contender this year. I think they obviously have teams that can make the playoff, maybe win their first round. I don't know if any Big 12 teams are going to make it past the first or second round of the playoff. I just don't know if they're talented enough top to bottom to compete with some of the heavyweights right now in college football. It's still kind of a question mark of who falls off this year. I think the bottom half of the league, Cincy, UCF, they're still kind of adjusting to the Big 12. I think they could struggle again. UCF, especially after losing Gus Malzahn to Florida State, that's going to be a program that may have a tough year. I think Colorado is going to be kind of a fun team to see their retooling. Obviously, losing Shedeur Sanders, losing Travis Hunter, those are going to be some big losses for them. They did bring in Caden Salter from Liberty, as well as five-star Juju Lewis at quarterback. So that's going to be an interesting team to watch. I don't think, though, that there's a ton of star power in the Big 12, which is one of the big reasons that I rank them fourth. I think the ACC is third. ACC and Big 12, it was kind of a toss-up for me. But I think the ACC, one of the big things, they have more overall star power than the Big 12, more household names. I think they probably have about the same amount of depth in terms of teams that can have really good seasons. But I think there's a couple more, and I think the quality of those teams are a little better. You have Clemson, Miami, who are probably still going to be pretty good again this season. Georgia Tech, I think they're going to have a good year. Then teams like Louisville, Syracuse, Duke, Boston College. Duke had 9 wins last season. Louisville was ranked for a long time. Syracuse had 10 wins. So those are all teams that I think with another year they could be even better. Those teams are kind of sneaky, though. I think Duke, especially, they got a quarterback upgrade after going 9-3. Manny Diaz's first season. Darian Mensah is going to be the starter at Duke now, coming in from Tulane. I think that's going to be a team that may surprise some people. Then you also have Boston College, Bill O'Brien in his second season there. I think you're going to see some improvement from Boston College. and just the floor of Boston College is going to be a lot higher than previous seasons, just because of the presence of Bill O'Brien and his second year in charge, kind of getting his guys in, getting his system in. I think Boston College could be a team that could be better than people expect. And then Syracuse is really interesting too. They went 10-3 last season. Obviously had Kyle McCord. They're going to have a different quarterback this year, but they've been recruiting better than people realize. Fran Brown has really been a good head coach hire for Syracuse, and I think they could probably be solid again. I think the presence of Clemson, of Miami, gives the ACC teams that have the capability to make some deep college football playoff runs. Clemson, I think if the cards all kind of fall in the right way, they could be a team that could potentially get to the semifinals or finals, just depending on Cade Klubnik and kind of how that offense clicks, especially in year 3, Garrett Riley's system. Obviously, that was a big offensive coordinator hire from them a couple years ago after he helped take TCU to the national championship. This is going to be year 3 for him, for Cade Klubnik. And that's going to be really crucial to see if Clemson can actually do anything. Just also the presence of Klubnik as well as Carson Beck. There's some top quarterbacks in the ACC that I think make them a little more watchable, a little stronger than the Big 12. The middle to top part of the ACC, that kind of range of teams 3 to 6 or 7, I think that's going to be really fascinating to watch. Just with some of those teams I mentioned, the Dukes, as well as I think Georgia Tech could have a really solid season. They had some really tough games last year. They almost beat Georgia. Had a really strong opener against Florida State, who obviously struggled last season. But I think that kind of middle to top part of the league is going to be really interesting. And another team who I haven't talked about is a team that made the playoff last year in SMU. They should not be forgotten. They have Kevin Jennings coming back. Obviously had a tough first-round matchup, having to go to Happy Valley and play Penn State at home in a game that was freezing. And then I think Florida State, just kind of what happens with Florida State. Are they going to look more like their 2023 self, where they went 13-0 and almost made the playoff? Or are they going to be more of the 2024 version, where they went 2-10, did not look anything like a powerhouse program, just really looked bad. Just the entire year, Florida State really looked rough. Are they going to bounce back? Are they going to kind of stay down towards the bottom of the conference? That's going to be really interesting. So I went back and forth between number 2 and number 1. I have right now the SEC as the second best conference. And there's a few reasons for this. I think the SEC this year really only has 2 teams that are legitimate championship contenders in Texas and Georgia. Alabama is going to be interesting to watch. They really struggled in Kalen DeBoer's first season, went 9-3, but they didn't look like Alabama teams of past. Obviously, that was kind of going to be expected after Nick Saban left, but that's going to be a team to look at. Again, with Texas and Georgia, though, they both are going to have new starting quarterbacks. Arch Manning going to take over at Texas. Probably going to be Gunnar Stockton at Georgia. Ryan Puglisi is still kind of in that competition. But then, Texas A&M, I think, will have a good year. Mike Elko, I think, is a really solid coach for them, and has really kind of found his footing in terms of recruiting Texas and recruiting that state, and he's kind of starting to pick momentum back up. I think Ole Miss and Tennessee are kind of going to be really big question marks, especially after Tennessee with losing Nico. What's going to happen there? Who's going to be their starter? I am kind of curious about South Carolina and LSU. South Carolina went 9-3. I think they're kind of a team with an upward projection. Lenore Sellers is going to be a really fun quarterback to watch as he continues to grow. LSU, Garrett Nussmeier is returning. He was one of 6 quarterbacks last year to throw for over 4,000 passing yards. And they're going to be a team that I think is going to bounce back, probably win a couple games. more than they did last year, maybe be 10-2, somewhere around there. But it really kind of feels like a transition year for the SEC this year. Just some of those programs that have been pretty strong in years past kind of are retooling, had a lot of guys leave. Ole Miss especially, they had a bunch of dudes declare for the draft. Most of that team from last year is going to be gone. So I think this is kind of a transition year for the SEC. I do think that the bottom of the SEC, though, is probably a higher quality than the bottom of the Big Ten. I think when you're looking at, Kentucky, Mississippi State were at the bottom of the SEC last year. I think those teams are better overall than Purdue, Maryland, Rutgers, the teams that were at the bottom of the Big Ten last year. However, I do have the Big Ten as number one. I think the number of true championship contenders, as well as just the depth of the conference, makes them the best conference in football right now. Oregon, Penn State, I think Ohio State's still a contender, even though they will obviously have a new quarterback. And then you also have teams like Michigan and Indiana that are kind of hanging around. Oregon and Penn State in particular, they really return a lot of pieces. Oregon's been really strong and just retooling each year. They will have a new quarterback in Dante Moore, but they've had a new quarterback the past few seasons and have seemed to kind of transition really well in between quarterbacks. Penn State obviously will return Drew Aller, return Katron Allen, Nick Singleton. Will still have a really strong defense. That's going to be a team that's going, I think this is a make-or-break year for Penn State. Michigan, I think they're going to be kind of an interesting team. They really had a strong finish to last year. Did not have a great season overall, but finishing strong, beating Ohio State in Columbus, as well as beating Alabama in the ReliaQuest Bowl. They have a ton of momentum going into the season, as well as now Bryce Underwood is on campus in Ann Arbor, number one quarterback of 2025. I don't know if he'll start right away, but I think we're going to see him really early into the season. And if Michigan's quarterback play improves slightly even, they really had poor quarterback play last year. I think if they have even average to above average quarterback play, they're going to be a team that win total is going to increase again. Indiana had a 10-win season last year, made the college football playoff. It's going to be year two for Curt Cignetti. I think they have a more talented quarterback this year in Cal transfer Fernando Mendoza, who had some really great moments last season for the Cal Bears. But I think Indiana is going to be a team. They're still going to be around. It's going to be year two for Cignetti, and I think they're still going to be a really quality football team. Illinois also, they're going to return Luke Altmaier. They had a decent year last year. They were ranked for most of the season. I think they're going to be right back up there again. Then you have teams like USC, Nebraska that have the talent, and there are teams that could potentially make the jump to a 9 or 10 win team. I think one of them probably wins at least 9. I don't know if both of those programs do. Nebraska in particular with Dylan Raiola as the quarterback for another season, I think that's going to be a team that could really make some noise. And then in terms of UCLA, I think that could be a team where Nico Iamaleava ends up at. It's a program that makes sense, and it's very possible that UCLA, if they get Nico, they could improve to be a much stronger program than last season. I think the storylines across the country kind of make the Big Ten the most interesting league at this point for college football. And this is going to be the league their games are going to change the national landscape, going to change what happens week in, week out with the college football playoff rankings. And I think that this league is going to make the most waves in this upcoming season for college football. So that's going to be all for our show today. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening. If you enjoyed, please remember, subscribe to the channel, and if you want, follow us for more content on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok for more updates, more sports content that you love. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn ain't that great. I don't wanna go to